We've got a visual on a landing pad. Positive ID on General Grievous.
What's he? Damn! Hello there.
Yo, what is up guys, this is Tyrannic Swine here, and welcome to another game review. I know you're getting a little tired of Star Wars games, but trust me, this will be the last one for a good while yet. But I am going to be reviewing Star Wars Republic Commando, a first-person tactical shooter developed and published by LucasArts that centers around the clone Commandos Delta Squad. The story is rather very simple. You play as the leader of Delta Squad, and you and your troops go from mission to mission throughout the Clone Wars, doing all sorts of dangerous kinds of stuff. And that's kind of pretty much the gist of the story. Now, if you ever think about playing this game, and if you're going into it thinking it's going to have a really well thought out story, you're not going to find that here. That isn't exactly what happens. I think this game more focuses on the whole gameplay and the mechanics around it. Although the story is quite surprising, you go to recognizable places like Geonosis and Kashyyyk. There's even characters from the Star Wars films that actually show up for a little bit in the game, like Yoda and even General Grievous, who I had no idea was actually going to turn up at all in this game. And the ending was a little surprising too, since throughout the game you have your three other buddies, Scorch, Seth, and Fixer, who are your other team members, and these guys have some nice, funny comments, jokes, and stuff like that they aim at towards each other or towards a situation, and it gives each of them a nice personality and a trait that they all have. Sev is a bit of a more confined and a bit of a quiet talker, Scorch is the jokative guy, and Fixer, well, he's a bit of a guy who points out the obvious, but each of these guys do feel different or like that. And the ending, despite feeling a bit rushed or it just stops or something like that, it kind of sucks that you end up leaving one of your comrades behind and never really go back to get him or solve the whole situation. You just leave him behind and then the game ends. And I was like, that was a little bit disappointing, to be quite honest. And yeah, I liked each of these dudes, but that ending sort of hit a bit of a nail in the coffin there. And considering this is a first-person shooter, there is about 16 levels in the campaign, and surprisingly enough, this game took me about, on medium difficulty, 8 to 9 or even 10 hours. I wasn't entirely sure, but that's pretty much what I clocked in. And for a game like this, that's actually pretty long, much longer than most first-person shooters we get these days. Usually they clock in about 6 to 7 hours, yet this goes a bit more, longer than those, and I'm actually nicely surprised by this. And considering that the game's combat is mainly centered around squad mechanics, there's a lot of things you can do with commanding your squad mates. They can do a lot of various things, like taking positions to either snipe enemies, throw grenades at them, use heavy weapons against them. There's even other mechanics where they can do like plant bombs, hack terminals, take control of enemy turrets, breach doors, or even access health machines to restore their health, and even set traps for the enemies. There's a huge nice variety of commands you can give to your squad mates that really can help you out in many combat situations. And if you hold the Y button and then you use the D-pad, you can also give your squad mates other commands like securing an area wherever you've pinpointed, search and destroy, which is where they'll go on fully attack mode where they'll just go after any enemy they see, or they will form up, which means they'll start following you, especially if they've taken positions in places and you want to move on to the next location. I really like these sort of things. And funny enough, usually when games do these sort of things, the AI turns out to be pretty damn terrible. I mean, sometimes it takes them forever just to follow an order or do something, but the AI in this game, the friendly AI especially, is phenomenal. I've never really seen something like this, especially with how well it works. Whenever you give a command, they respond immediately, and they are very effective against the enemy. You will rely so much on your squad mates that when you get to various parts of the missions where you're on your own, you're definitely gonna miss them, because these guys can take definitely a lot of hits, and they will literally just tear enemies apart with how accurate they can be, especially on turrets. They are absolutely deadly on those things. Hell, even when you go down in the middle of a big battle, your friendlies will immediately come and try to revive you, and they'll even do certain actions on your own just by pure instinct. Like if they're low on health, they'll go to a health machine. If one of the other AI squad mates is down, they'll go revive them. I really like how even if you give them commands, they'll still do things on their own accord. Now let's talk about your weaponry. You have your standard DC-17M blaster, which is very handy with its rapid fire and can take out droids and other enemies in the game very quickly. But I also like how there's different firing modes for it. You also have a sniper firing mode, you even have a grenade launcher firing mode, and these can be incredibly handful, especially when you run out of ammunition for your default setting. There's also a few other types of weapons. You also have, if you run out of ammunition for everything, you do have a backup blaster pistol which does have infinite ammo, but it does need to recharge its energy if you use it a bit too much. And it's even enemy weapons you can pick up throughout the games, like Trandoshan weaponries, Genosian lasers, and even Wookiee bowcasters. I really liked the amount of weaponry the game offered you, and it was kind of surprising. I was only expecting for the character to be using the DC-17M blaster and its attachments, but the fact that I could pick up enemy weaponry or other stuff, and it was actually quite a decent amount too, I was very surprised by this. And it can definitely help you out in many different situations, especially if you've run out of ammunition for your DC-17M. You even have a wide selection of grenades to choose from too. You have like thermal detonators, like shock grenades, which are very handy for droids. You even have like these concussion or gas type grenades. I'm not exactly sure what they were called, but they definitely would take out enemies pretty damn easily. And you even have flash grenades, which are very handy against the more organic enemies like Trandoshans or Genosians, but it won't work on the droids whatsoever. But be careful when you set them off, because they will sort of blind you too. Now, I really like how the game does the melee. The Clone Wars never really explain how clones were able to take droids on in hand-to-hand combat, since they probably break their hands since they're made out of metal. But Republic Commandos actually gives us some sort of answer by the fact that they have like your clone commando has like a hidden like wrist knife thing, and I think that was pretty damn cool when you're like stabbing your enemies, and it's very quick too. You can press that button as quick as you can, and you will like melee like flash. It's incredibly quick, though it's very slippery. You have to be very precise when it comes to hitting your enemy with the melee. Now moving on to the enemies. Now the enemies are split into three factions. You have your droids, your Trandoshans, and your Genosians, and each of these guys are difficult in their own ways, mainly because they're programmed differently. The droids are a lot more static. They'll rely more on numbers to take you out than having to use like more flexible moves like jumping around and stuff like that, unless you encounter Magna Guards. Magna Guards are very surprising to see in this game, especially considering they're like General Grievous's bodyguards, and you think clones would get their asses kicked, yet as a commando you can kick their asses. And Magna Guards are probably one of the more interesting enemies, which I'll get to in a minute, but the other separatist droids, like the battle droids, there's even droidicas in this game, they can be quite challenging to go up against, especially if there is a lot of them, and that's why you'll need to rely a lot on your squad and your weapons to take them down. And it's really nice how you can actually command your squad to target certain enemies so they can concentrate their fire on them, which is very handy against super battle droids or giant spire droids, which are pretty much the closest you're gonna get to boss type enemies. And since they have like only a certain weakness where you have to shoot at their eye, these battles can be quite drawn out unless you like fire as many heavy weapon type weapons at them or grenades, and it'll be over in very quickly. But I do like how tenacious these like droid enemies are. They will come at you in full force, and they can be incredibly deadly in large numbers. They will rip you apart if you give them the chance. The Genosians, they're more of the creepy enemies, since they like to fly around and everything, and there's the little baby Genosians. That was fucking nasty to see. They like spit acid at you. It was very nasty seeing those sort of things. Seeing them come out of eggs on the final mission was horrible. But the Genosians aren't that difficult to take out. There's only like 3 types of those. The only ones who really have to worry about are the ones that have like these big giant lasers flying in the sky and are a little bit tougher to take out. But a quick hit to the face and they'll die pretty damn quickly. The Trandoshans, on the other hand, are a little bit more bold. They will try and run and sprint at your position with either shotguns or SMGs or other types of weapons like concussion rifles. They'll storm your position, making it very difficult to take them out from behind cover or in a ranged position. They'll just come at you and that's it, especially when they go into berserk mode, where they get out their knives and swords and start chasing after you. That's when it's best when you use a close quarter weapon, which is why it's always best at certain points to pick up a Trandoshan shotgun in these sort of situations. Although those gas grenades are very useful too, or flashbangs, they can be useful too in these sort of situations. But the Trandoshans are an enemy you don't really want to mess with, especially when there's quite a good amount of them in the area. Now the AI for the enemies is honestly not too bad. It's not as good as the squad mates AI, but it's still enough to present you with a challenge. Sometimes they'll just stand in a position and just stay there till you kill them, but they actually do. Each of the enemy factions have their own strategies. The droids will just come at you slowly in loads of numbers. The Trandoshans will charge at you, and the Genosians will fly around, annoying you with their constant harassment of spears and lasers. And I really like that. And I think the most impressive of all the enemies is definitely the Magna Guards. They are like what the aliens in Colonial Marines should have been, which is going up, flipping around all over the place, moving very quickly, climbing on walls, attacking your position really quickly, and then retreating if they're getting heavily attacked. The Magna Guards were definitely the most impressive enemies of the entire game, and definitely felt like a semi-boss enemy type. Now the level design is split up into many different sections. You do have small sections where you go down a linear path taking out enemies from point A to B, and some sections have you fighting a large room with tons of enemies and doing a few objectives while just trying to take them out and everything, and that's pretty much the gist of the level design. It was okay, but it wasn't fantastic either, but I do like how they do try to put in certain obstacles here and there, but it wasn't really enough to make it amazing level design. But to be honest, this game was back in the day when level design wasn't entirely out there just yet. But what's really sad for me is the fact that you only get 3 different locations: Geonosis, Kashyyyk, and abandoned clone assault cruiser. Now these locations, they were okay, but I felt like the fact that they dragged on for a bit too long in each area felt like they were just padding out the game. I mean, you could have gone to more different places. I mean, you had a lot of lore and stuff to go on, even though this was before Episode 3 came out, or just around by the time it came out, since it came out in 2005 with this game. But yeah, it's the fact that you only go to 3 places, and that's it, and the fact that the game is 8 to 9 hours, it's a bit shady, and it's a bit sad to see that you don't go to too many other places other than these 3 places. And honestly, I wish there were more sections where you could use the night visor. That was pretty damn cool for a mechanic to have in this game, and it definitely would have worked because you're espionage commandos and everything. But there's only 1 or 2 sections on each planet, and that's it. I feel like the game didn't really harness the use of the night visor properly, and that really kind of sucked. Now the graphics when this game came out, and still to this day, look pretty damn nice. It was cool that you could see the outline of your helmet from your viewpoint. That was pretty nice. The health system works very much like the first Halo game, Halo CE, and the fact that you have to regain some of your health by getting to these health stations. That was a cool mechanic that I forgot to talk about, but yeah. The graphics, I like the look of the Commandos. Each of them was nicely detailed and designed differently to show the separation of their character and personality. And I also like how the game had a more darker look, because that was the whole point of the Commandos. Is compared to other Star Wars games, it's a more dangerous situation. And I like how the look of the enemies also show that. The battle droids look pretty menacing and devilish. The fact that they don't look like their hilarious counterparts that you see in the Clone Wars animated series. These guys look very nasty and look run down for some reason. And I was like, ugh. These don't look like the happy chappy guys you see in the TV series. And even some of the other enemies you see in the game, like the Geonosians, they look horrible and nasty. You just wouldn't want to see those in a dark hallway out of nowhere. It scared the shit out of you. And the Trandoshans, well, they're lizard guys. You can't really make them look scary in most ways, unless you make them big, tall, and have a lot of teeth and claws. But these guys weren't really that scary. They were more like vicious bounty hunters than creepy monsters. But I really like how the developers went for a more darker tone of the Star Wars universe. Now, as I've said from the Battlefront videos that the music is pretty much always ripped straight from the films, it's pretty much the same here. But at least they do try to create their own music. They really rely a lot on an echoey choir, which was quite nice to listen to from time to time, but then most of the time you're going to be listening to familiar sounds and clips from the Star Wars films, and you won't really hear the choir all too often. I think it's only in specific points where the story or the plot tries to change a little bit or something big happens, and that's really it. But yeah, most of the time you're going to be hearing the usual Star Wars music from the films. Now, there is actually multiplayer in this game, and sadly since the multiplayer servers are no longer operational, I couldn't really check this out, but I did see what other like extras and stuff there were. Like the customization, there is some stuff here, and there is quite a lot already unlocked. I don't really think you have to work for it, it's just there for you from the get-go. And you can choose between customizing your clone Commando or your Trandoshan, which is kind of surprised for the fact that I'm surprised they didn't choose to go with the battle droids or anything. So yeah, you get to play as Trandoshans, which is kind of weird. But there's only like 4 game modes in this game, but I think that kind of makes some sense because the campaign is the main focus here and not the multiplayer. And there's like Deathmatch, which is your free-for-all team deathmatch, you have Capture the Flag, and then there is Assault. I mean, these game modes probably would have been great if I did manage to play them. Maybe, yeah, considering how the health system works is very similar to Halo, so I feel like it would have felt a bit like a Star Wars / Halo sort of crossbreed in the way the multiplayer would have worked. And I feel like that would have actually been pretty interesting if I ever had experienced it. So yeah, overall, Star Wars Republic Commando is a pretty damn nice game, even though it does have like a few nitpicks here and there. It's mainly a very fun game and it's great to play. Definitely one of those better Star Wars games and definitely puts in more effort than what EA has ever done for the Star Wars license. And if you're all looking for like a Star Wars first-person shooter, this is definitely one to check out, and it's actually very fun despite the fact that the game does run a bit too long and the fact that the locations are very scarce with different areas. But other than that, the main gameplay itself and the nice comments and jokes between the squad mates and Delta Squad, and just the gameplay in general, the whole squad mechanics and everything, and the smart AI between friend and foe, that will keep you going throughout the game, and you would really like to see how it ends, although the ending is a little bit disappointing. But nonetheless, I really liked Republic Commando, and I'm going to give it So yeah, that's my review of Star Wars Republic Commando. I really hope they would make another game like this at some point in the future, but considering EA is the one in charge of the license, yeah, I don't want a game like this made by them until someone else acquires the license, until we see what they can do, which I hope would be a game like this at some point. But nevertheless, I hope you guys have enjoyed this review. Leave a like down below, subscribe, comment on what you think of the game, comment on what other games you think I could review, share this video on social media, and I shall see you guys in the next random video.